Hulk Hogan and his merry band of mercenaries are back, doing what they do best. Dropping grenades from helicopters, fighting nannies, and recognizing war criminals because they just have the most beautiful eyes. We watch Shadow Warriors today on
The Fun Is This.
Busy when that was the thing back then. Oh yeah, so I would say in this case, this is great that we're getting together to do this kind of stuff because we can't see each other right now for obvious reasons. But once live music can become a thing again, I can just clearly say, let's give musicians the much respect that they totally deserve after so many months of missing out, basically.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Props to you for keeping busy with your own stuff, and props to a friend of the show, Tashana Sahada, for continuing her music passions. Just not to say that she's following our lead, but we kept up doing the podcast during the pandemic. I see a lot of my musician friends are keeping up their musical endeavors throughout the pandemic. So my hat goes off to any creative person who's still finding the means to get their shit out there.
Oh yeah, and like I said, it's a big world out there, and people don't realize that if you're only staying in your local scene for so many years. But as for myself, I knew last year in 2020, before the pandemic even came to mind, I really wanted to touch base with different people, different music fans from across the globe, different podcasters and all that. Because my friends have pushed me to, they said, hey, yeah, you should connect with people outside of our hometown because, it's so different. The way they think, the way they appreciate music is so different, compared to the West Coast, for example. And I was so glad to do that. And the pandemic kind of push that in that direction too. And because
it's so funny because that's sort of the way that the world has been going in that direction even pre-pandemic. The world has kind of gotten smaller and more digitally connected that you can collaborate with someone on the other side of the world.
Oh yes. It's all to the power of digital technology. And it's crazy because I won't say too much right now of what's going to be happening pretty soon on my YouTube channel, for instance. But one of my first experiments of collaborating with somebody on virtually was one of my friends here in Vancouver named Bryce Tabbage, who's a really sick guitar player, one of the best lead guitar players in my books so far. And he and we did that cover of the Ocarina of Time from Zelda, if you recall that on my channel.
Dope. Yeah.
So it's builds up, because Bryce actually had a legit ocarina. He actually played those notes on that thing. And then
that was what was making the sun rise and fall so crazily the other day.
Exactly. And so I had this idea of thinking, well, why don't we take that and then we add some drums, add some bass and heavy guitars. So we build it up, and then we just double time it, make it more metal. And then Bryce just threw in one of the best guitar solos I've ever seen on his end. And it was awesome. So I think, we released that back in January. And I think now we're at over 300 views on YouTube, which is great because
nice.
There's a market for video game soundtracks.
Oh yeah. That was a dope cover. I love that. It really reminded me of Power Glove, which I listen to quite a lot. I put that in the background.
Power Glove, yeah.
Yeah, when I'm playing my iPhone games, I always listen to that. So yeah, no, I really appreciated that cover.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Eddie, for coming to talk on our podcast, a podcast that is not about music at all. But we appreciate being here anyway. And hey, welcome back, however you wish to self-identify, to The Fuck Is This, where we dive through DVD bins, sort through streaming apps to find the weird, the bizarre, and the unloved. I'm your host, Kaz Lesgard, and joining me always is my co-host, Jameson Rafter.
Boy, you said it, Kaz.
I did say it. That's because it's the part of it's the intro. So, I have to say it every time. And welcome back to the third annual WrestleMania! We forgot to do that last time, so we have to keep ourselves in check here. We are nothing if not creatures of habit, Jameson. Yes,
we
for
try
the
to
month
be.
of May, we always watch movies that star wrestlers, and today on the show, we are finishing a movie that we started watching 2 years ago on the very first WrestleMania. Now, Jameson, you and I, we watch a lot of movies that can't seem to make up their mind what to call themselves. This is a reoccurring thing that keeps happening, but I think it's safe to say today's movie has the biggest identity crisis of any movie that we've watched so far on the show, and I'm including Quest for the Mighty Sword in that pile. So today's movie, IMDb credits it as Shadow Warriors 2, Hunt for the Death Merchant. Letterboxd credits it as Shadow Warriors 2, Assault on Death Mountain, speaking about Ocarina of Time. But in the opening credits of the movie, it's just called Shadow Warriors, which I think helps explain our initial confusion 2 years ago when we started watching this instead of the movie
Assault on Devil's Island, which was like
Assault
the
on Devil's
first
Island
in the series, so yeah. And
So-
as it's called on YouTube, which is like what inspired me to watch in the first place, Shadow Warriors, brother.mp4, just exactly as the file name is called. So
Which
that is a must watch in my eyes.
Which I think we've agreed is what we're going to title this episode. Yes, Shadow Warriors, brother.
Yeah.
We don't need to include the MP4, I think, right? We can just call it Shadow Warriors brother, just to simplify it.
Yeah, just to like conflict with the absolute like YouTube search. So when people go to watch Shadow Warriors, brother, they end up watching our episode and like pumping our view count.
That's right, it's back to back. I like that. That's smart inward thinking. And of course, joining us today, we were not able to get our original guest, not our original guest for this episode, but our original guest for the first Assault on Devil's Island.
Yes, we're
Scott
missing
Murray was not able to come back.
We're missing like the component of friend of the show and my buddy Scott Murray. He wanted to come back for this, but his life has certainly changed since the start of the pandemic. He and his lovely wife Michelle had a baby, so he is like full on dad mode right now. He wishes us the best. Little Enzo. I still haven't met the little guy, but I'm looking forward to that day. So instead, I called in a ringer, a backup.
It's a no-brainer. It's a very cool guest for us. A very awesome get.
Absolutely. He is a local musician, best known for being in the bands The Naturals and Cry of Silence, and he has a very prominent online presence as a online music teacher on TikTok, I believe.
That's correct.
And he also spearheaded the live piano karaoke, Mr. Eddie Lamb.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for having me back here. And I gotta say, you know, when it comes to wrestling movies, or movies that star wrestlers in there, even if it's just a cameo appearance, you know you're going to have two directions. Either it's going to be loads of corn, or it's going to be loads of unpredictability and loads of WTFs.
That's a very apt way to put it. Because, yes, we've been doing this for about 3 years now, and they've run the gamut from movies starring the wrestler to movies that just sort of feature the wrestler as like a supporting character role, be it like minor or major. But yeah, like they do run the gamut from being what the fuck to like amazing, corny masterpieces to occasionally good to very often bad.
Exactly. And I tell you, I mean, the first time I was exposed to seeing wrestlers on a movie would have to be it is Hulk Hogan. When he did, I saw the ad for Suburban Commando, and I never really saw that movie, probably parts of it when I was, just doing my homework and I had the TV on the background. But, I remember seeing the ads for that. I'm just like, wow, they're trying to get Hogan to be a legit actor. And.
Well, legit is.
Depends how you define legit. I would say,
they're pushing him in that direction, but.
They tried really hard. I tell you. But when it comes to even having like other wrestlers doing the same thing, of course, like, The Rock is one of the most well-known ones right now, and what is it, the highest-paying actor at this moment. That can be successful. That's an example of success right there on his end. But then I remember when back in 2000 or 2001, Edge was on the Highlander movie, if you recall that.
Which Highlander movie?
I forgot what it was. I know it was like early 2000 or 2001, somewhere around that range. But he only made like a 5-minute appearance, and though it's so funny because they heavily advertised it as, also starring Edge. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, my friends who loved Edge more than I did at the time, they're like, yeah, let's go see that movie. And then we did. And we only went just to see 5 minutes of it. And then the rest was all, pretty forgettable in my personal opinion. I know there's some Highlander cult fans out there who love that series to a bloody pulp, which I don't blame them for. But for me, it was a pretty forgettable one on my end. But the only thing I can say is that, yeah, because Edge was in it. That's my reason of going to watch it.
But that 5 minutes of Edge made all the difference.
To think of it, the early 2000s was a prime era for wrestlers trying to branch into like nerd franchise territory. You know, like you had Macho Man in the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie as Bonesaw. You had Kevin Nash as Sabretooth in the first X-Men movie.
Sorry to correct you there. That was a wrestler. That was Tyler Mane as Sabretooth in the first one. But yeah, wrestlers have a habit of popping up in Marvel properties. Triple H was famously, maybe not famously, but he was in the third Blade movie, I remember.
That's correct. And going back to Kevin Nash, actually, he actually did, let's see, 2 movies that I know that came to my library would be Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze back in the early 90s. And then...
He was Super Shredder. That was correct.
Yeah, and that was before we even saw him as a wrestler.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so he only made a 5-minute cameo as Super Shredder. Sorry to spoil to everyone out there.
Shredder!
Yeah, so to everyone who hasn't seen it, sorry for the spoilers, but you've been warned. Here we go, spoiler time. Again, I'm gonna say it again. Kevin Nash was Super Shredder for 5 minutes, and that was pretty much it. But he also was in the Punisher movie, the one starring Thomas Jane as the Punisher, so 2004. And he played as this muscular Russian guy who tried to, fight the Punisher and everything. So I won't give away what happened in that one, but if you guys haven't seen the 2004 Punisher, I recommend you check that out.
Definitely, and I'll just add on to that, Thomas Jane's fight with Kevin Nash in that Punisher movie, the best part of that Punisher movie, hands down. That's a fairly mediocre Punisher movie all around, but that fight sequence, I feel like it goes on for at least 10 minutes.
I would say so.
It's just incredible. It's so good.
And here's the thing too, about that Punisher movie specifically, and just goes back to my purpose as a musician. That soundtrack, if you're into metal, new metal, that is the soundtrack you need to listen to. And here's another wrestling parallel too. That also has Finger Eleven's version of Kane's theme song on there, on that soundtrack.
Was that the credits theme or was that something different?
Is this just one of those songs that they just put on there just for the sake of adding tracks to the soundtrack?
To fill out like those soundtrack albums, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But speaking of wrestling, there you go.
Oh, there we go.
I have a personal, library of stuff just from not from the internet, just from my personal experience, basically. So I just try to connect
stuff that you picked up over the years.
Trying to connect the dots and everything, basically.
Speaking of Kevin Nash, since we are on this subject, you know what he's excellent in are the 2 Magic Mike movies.
Really? So I have not seen that one yet.
I haven't seen him either.
No, he's one of Channing Tatum's fellow strippers, and you see quite a lot of Kevin Nash in those movies. But he also is just like genuinely good in a supporting performance there. So Eddie, we talked a little bit about wrestlers in movies, and we talked a little bit about Hulk Hogan, who is the star of today's movie. But what would you say is generally your history with wrestling in general? Do you consider yourself a wrestling fan?
A very huge wrestling fan. I've been watching it. So I got a little jab at it since I would say like the late 80s. Being a very, very, very small kid, but my folks would be watching it, which includes like my dad and my sister. So we'd be all watching it. It was pretty entertaining, but during that time, when you're like a very small child, you have no clue about what channel it's on and when is it on, that kind of deal. So if you come across it, you just come across it and you just watch it. And then as I got a little bit older, I would say that in the very early 90s, I got really into it, like much more than ever, just because like I started to figure out what channel it was on and when can I catch it, that kind of deal. And I remember that at one point, wrestling would be on almost 3 times a day on Saturdays. So you would catch it on BCTV. You can catch one at like the 12 noon showtime, and then another channel would have it at 1 o'clock, and then you can watch another one at 3 o'clock. But that goes at another channel. But they're showing the same thing for most of it. They'll show you probably like a few other matches that don't get aired on there, but other than that, it's just one of those B-side wrestling programs. But they still show you like the main storylines in the middle regardless. But they'll just throw a few side matches that probably don't even really matter. But that was pretty much my childhood for most of it. So I would know a lot about like The Undertaker, Hulk Hogan, Sergeant Slaughter, Ric Flair, Jake the Snake, and all those guys, right? So I've been watching wrestling for the longest time, as you can imagine. But the crazy thing is I think we can all say this safely, is that I think the best era, obviously for us, is the Attitude Era. Because that's when they decide.
That was what our last guest said as well. So I feel like that's going to be a reoccurring thing every time we bring this up. It's certainly the era that I remember.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing about the Ruthless Aggression era right after the Attitude Era. You know, it's still just as edgy, and you know they're still playing metal music for the opening themes and all that, and it gets me pumped up. And I was talking about this in one of my podcasts I did a little while back. I do a thing called Music Talk Mondays sometimes, where I stream on Twitch and YouTube and just talk about different music topics. And one of the things I talked about was the purpose of music in wrestling, and what music does is that it plays a huge role to hype up the crowd, and that's what should make a good theme song. What should make a good wrestler's theme even is any upbeat music. Now, if it's going to be like slow, like say The Undertaker's, for example, it has to mean something. If it's going to be like, slow and, like half time and all that stuff, there's a reason behind it. And of course, Undertaker is such a prime example because, you know, it's slow paced, but you know what? His presence and the stage antics make up for it.
Absolutely. Like that, like, you know, the Undertaker's theme, and it's just so different from everything else that's played during the shows. Who would you say has the best wrestling theme, and who would you say has the worst?
Okay. So right now, because I know we all want to say Hulk Hogan's real American, and I'm not just saying that just because he's our main topic for today, but I truly feel, you know, because he's one of the most iconic guys. But if you really want something that's really hyped up in the last decade, I am going to choose between the two. These two are tied in my opinion because this is well done. In NXT, or I guess they're on the main roster now, both of them I would say Shinsuke Nakamura and Bobby Roode. Their theme songs say grand entry, right? And knowing the fact that it's like memorable hooks that the composers have made, which was LFO was it CFO $, those guys. So they were the composers after Jim Johnston left. But those guys create such a really catchy hook for these melodies that the crowd sings along to them. So when a crowd sings along to them, you're onto something. And
absolutely, yeah. Whether they hate it or not, like as soon as like the crowd has like a participation moment to it, like you know that this is sticking with the crowd, and this is going to carry them through forever. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And the worst one I would say is was it in the Ruthless Aggression era? It was Rob Conway's theme.
I have no idea who that is.
Okay, so Rob Conway was so he first joined WWE as the third member of La Resistance. Remember that French tag team? They were like this French tag guys. Okay, so after the La Resistance group broke up, then this is
the first I'm hearing of this, and this is amazing that there was a French tag team group called La Resistance. I'm just picturing big muscular men in like berets with like smashing each other with French bread. Sorry, Eddie, please go on. Like, this is amazing. I don't want to look this up because I don't want to know what they actually look like. I just want the image of them in my mind to be true.
Well, you have to understand like what the era that this was in, because in the Ruthless Aggression era, don't forget George W. Bush was president, right? And during that time, because of with the war happening, right, and the terrorist attacks and all that,
Freedom Fries thing,
Freedom Fries and everything. Yeah, they didn't want anything to do with the war on terror. Yeah,
exactly. Okay. So it's all about, you know, pro America, right? So WWE or Vince McMahon specifically was all about that, right? It's like, you know, okay, we're gonna make America strong, so we gotta have like some anti-American storylines.
It's back to the evil foreigner gimmicks from like the 80s and stuff. Which
I know. So it's like that whole thing. So they started as a tag team, then it became a trio. But Rob Conway was his background was he was what we call a French sympathizer. So he was an American dude, but he joined the French group because they just needed a third person, basically. That's all. That's all it was. So after the group disbanded eventually, Rob Conway decided to go solo as well, and he had one of the worst theme music you would ever hear. I'm not going to give it away, obviously, so I would say if you go on YouTube, guys, look it up. Go Rob Conway's
theme song. Yeah, we'll probably
type
type it in right about here. And
just look at me.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And he had this interesting a catchphrase which did not work, obviously. He goes, if you're doing it the wrong way, then you're not doing the Conway, or something like that.
Oh, I can't believe that never worked.
Sounds
like he was doing it the Conway.
Oh my goodness. I mean, think about all the other failed gimmicks too, you know, like Duke the Dumpster Drosy. I mean, at first I was rooting for Duke Dumpster because it's like a garbage man gimmick, right? And I thought, this seems pretty fun. But
yeah, it's time to take out the trash. That just writes itself.
Take out the trash. You know, I mean, imagine like if he had stuck around a lot longer, I would have liked to see him team up with the Godwins, for example. You know, like that hillbilly tag team. Like, man, they would have made a great team.
I love a good gimmick match. So, fucking
Shadow Warriors, comma, brother. Now, Eddie, you did some fantastic homework, more homework than a lot of our guests normally do, and you actually went ahead and watched both movies, so you have a baseline of what to expect from the first movie here. What were your general thoughts on Assault on Devil's Island? Interestingly enough, every time I keep, looking up the multitude of titles for today's movie, I'm not finding a ton of media that gives the title Shadow Warriors 1 to Assault on Devil's Island. It's mostly just called Assault on Devil's Island, no matter where you find it.
Then they decided they wanted to make this like a 2-movie franchise.
Okay, so
yes,
so my initial thoughts on that. So in part 1, it feels like it's a nice movie that's stuck in the 80s for some reason.
It's probably because it has Carl Weathers and Hulk Hogan and...
Exactly. And knowing the fact that you have Sensei Kreese on there. I'm just like, oh my goodness. So they were still stuck in the 80s even during the late, mid-90s when they made this movie. But, it's such a interesting thing though, where it's like Hulk Hogan gets betrayed, just like wrestling, he gets betrayed by a friend. And that friend becomes the main bad guy, the storyline. It's just like wrestling. It's the same exact deal. It's crazy because it's just like, okay, well, here's Hulk Hogan, kicking ass with guns and martial arts, right? And just knowing the fact that he's just taking on a bunch of people, but at the same time, though, like when you see Shannon Tweed on there, I'm just like, oh my goodness, like, it's crazy. It's exactly a very American style Hollywood film in terms of military action where you're going to have someone like Shannon Tweed, blonde hair, blue eyes,
Playboy playmate of like the 80s.
And if we have not mentioned it before, this is a pro Shannon Tweed podcast. With this movie, this is now Shannon Tweed's 4th appearance on this podcast. She is probably the most covered actor that we have done. We are 100% Shannon Tweed stans.
We didn't start out doing that. Yeah. She just happens to keep popping up in our movies.
Way. Yeah,
it does.
It's her, Roddy Piper, and George Eastman are like sort of the standard bearers. They're like the Mount Rushmore of TFIT right now.
Oh, for sure. But I mean, the movie itself was just so it's exactly what I would expect it to be. Basically, it's just like a bunch of explosions and all that. But just knowing the fact that Sensei Kreese was there too, and here he is, like just
playing
trying
a good guy for a change.
And playing as a good guy. This is weird. It's like seeing Anthony Hopkins playing a gentle, kind of hearted guy too, which has happened, which is really strange.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's a little hard to buy when Anthony Hopkins is playing like the kindly grandfather and everything. There's like,
exactly.
What was that movie where he kind of had like magical power, like Hearts in Atlantis?
Something like that, yeah.
He's playing like a nice old man who has like a relationship with like a young boy, and he's just like, oh, I'm just nice Anthony Hopkins, and it's just like,
when are you gonna eat him?
No, we know you're up to something. We know there's like a dark backstory,
a diabolical plan, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But seeing Sensei Kreese in the first Shadow Warrior movie, I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is kind of weird. So he's playing like this guy helping Hulk Hogan now. Now mind you, though, at the same time, like the guy who played the bad guy is like what?
Trevor Goddard,
the long silver fox villain.
For those listening who haven't listened to the first episode or haven't watched Assault on Devil's Island, basically the sort of like main team of the Shadow Warriors themselves. I mean, you have the iconic quartet of Hulk Hogan, Shannon Tweed, Carl Weathers, and Martin Kove, aka Sensei Kreese. But the thing that is this movie's, the second movie's downfall is it doesn't have that electric supporting cast of main villain Trevor Goddard, secondary henchman Billy Blanks, and also the iconic Billy Drago as sort of the cocaine kingpin as well. Just a phenomenal cast. This unfortunately doesn't quite have the same supporting cast to back it up. What a stacked bunch of actors to all throw together into a cheesy TNT TV movie like that.
And it's so funny how you mentioned that because, the first half hour when I was watching, part 2, I mean, like I told you guys previously, prior to this broadcast here, it gave me BC vibes. Like how everyone has like a hometown instinct when you watch a movie. I truly believe that. And so I felt that same way when I was watching the new Planet of the Apes trilogy that came out 10 years ago. I felt that same vibe when watching Neverending Story Part 1. I felt this exact same vibe when watching think of those TV shows like Outer Limits or was it Sliders, X-Files,
all
right?
of the CW superhero stuff.
Yeah, and Riverdale, same thing too. So you feel that hometown vibe coming at you. You know, it's screaming, you know, BC. And
not to mention the most Vancouver movie ever made, Deadpool.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Where my favorite moment happens in Deadpool, where he walks into the Cobalt, it becomes Orange No. 5 Strip Club, and then he walks out the back and he's in Gastown. That's my favorite part of that movie. That makes me laugh every time.
I know, and it's just so funny because like I've been to the Cobalt quite a few times in my past too, and I know exactly how the Cobalt looks like. I'm just like, that's the Cobalt. That is the Cobalt. I was like, wait a minute, why does it look so different all of a sudden in the next shot, right? And it's I see what they're trying to do, trying to do there. But knowing the fact that they were on the gondola and all those trees look so familiar too, I'm just like, only a true BC person would know about those trees. And
like that scene takes place in Austria by way of, you know, Grouse Mountain in North Van.
It is Grouse Mountain, yes, 100%.
Exactly.
That is Grouse Mountain. Yeah. What I liked about this movie, I mean, much like how we accidentally keep doing movies with Shannon Tweed and we keep accidentally doing movies that can't make up their mind what to call themselves, we keep, not on purpose, doing movies that are shot in Vancouver. We've done 3 so far this year alone, and we don't plan that ahead of time. That just kind of keeps happening. But what I appreciated about Shadow Warriors, Brother, is the rare movie that is both shot in BC and partly takes place in BC. Well, of course, in the movie they say, we're going to Canada. And they don't elaborate any further than that because it's just Canada.
So there was one of my things that I appreciate about this movie compared to the first one is, so Shadow Warriors 1, that takes place around, let's say, Miami, Columbia, and
it was shot in Florida,
Caribbean. Very tropical kind of set area. This, for the one
budget
way to look
reasons,
at it, is that this is more of a international globe-trotting kind of movie it starts off in Seattle, and then they're in Austria, and then they're in Saudi Arabia, and then the movie ends in British Columbia. I remember the very first time that I watched this movie with my friends, and John Kreese is showing the satellite maps, and he's like, this is an area called Horseshoe Bay. And my friends and I were like, ooh! And then it zooms in on the mining museum, because Vancouver has played so many different cities. There's that famous video essay by Every Frame a Painting called Vancouver Never Plays Itself.
That's right.
And, Vancouver has been the stand-in for Seattle and Portland and New York and Toronto and Boston and, even in this movie, Austria. And this is one of the first times I've seen a movie where Vancouver's playing itself in the climax of this movie.
And very briefly too. It's we only get cameos here and there. And I mean, the only other movie I could think of that I think that takes place in Vancouver, if they said so, there's this really unknown film that Sandra Oh starred in, Sandra Oh from Grey's Anatomy. Yeah. She did this old movie back a long time ago called Double Happiness, and I think that's supposed to take place in Vancouver, but I don't know if they really say it is, but...
Was it a Canadian-produced movie?
I think it is, yeah. I think
that's Sandra Oh is Canadian, so I imagine that probably had something to do with it. Obviously, you watch a Canadian indie, every once in a while you will watch a movie that is set in Vancouver, but it's rare for an American production with Hulk Hogan, of all people, to at least acknowledge the fact that it takes place in BC. I mean, I don't think they say British Columbia outright, but they do say Horseshoe Bay. So that was for
crazy.
All of us.
And it's in the right location, too.
Yeah, they pointed it correctly.
Now, Jameson, correct me if I'm wrong, this final set piece, is it the same final set piece that was in Camouflage?
It's the mining museum, so sure. Probably.
I'm sure it is.
Well, is there more than one mining museum? I don't know, because I'm watching this, I'm all like, this looks oddly familiar. Almost like we just saw this in an episode recently.
Well, I mean, this was set, I want to say, a couple of years before Camouflage. So before they did the massive renovation project to fix it up and make it more of a tourist trap, it really was just sort of like a quasi-heritage site where it was still it wasn't an operational mine, but they would let people do tours. They just didn't give it a fresh coat of paint. So it does look like an abandoned mine in this movie.
Yeah, and also, as we can see from the end of this movie, they blew it up. So obviously they demolished it in between this and the filming of Camouflage. So that makes a lot of sense as well, too.
And if we want to blow up your mine, we were planning on renovating it anyway. So go ahead.
As a very a typical American Hollywood style fashion where you walk away from the explosions.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to talk
Cool
about
guys
that
not looking at
moment
explosions.
a little bit here because I do love that moment very much. But this movie is basically the exact same team as the first movie. It's once again directed by John Cassar, who, as we talked about last time, is the guy who's responsible for the majority of 24. He directed the bulk of the episodes of that, and he's also worked on pretty much every spin-off of 24. And in addition, he's also worked on like 3 or 4 Kiefer Sutherland movies. So big fan of that guy. They work together a ton here. In between Shadow Warriors 1 and Shadow Warriors, Brother, he also directed another direct-to-TV Hulk Hogan movie called The Ultimate Weapon, which unfortunately I was not able to find on YouTube. But we might have to track that down one of these days, Jameson, to complete the John Cassar Hulk Hogan trilogy, as it were. Because clearly they enjoy working together.
Actually, I shouldn't say that. These cheesy action movies are quite delightful for what they are.
But I mean, it's so crazy because these movies were so cheesy that, including Shadow Warriors, they were never mentioned in Wikipedia. They never had their own Wikipedia profile at all.
This movie has no Wikipedia presence, and also going off of IMDb, it's also not a complete cast list. Like the cast list stops after about 12 or 14 people. And there are notably small supporting roles that I can't seem to find any actor attributed to. In particular, I wanted to look up who played the German nanny in this, because that was a character I really enjoyed, and I can't seem to find an actor attributed to that role.
That was an interesting fight scene.
It's just an incomplete, it's just an incomplete credits list.
You know which actor jumped out to me just because I recognized the face, and then I had to confirm it on IMDb. And this is sort of a little, not a whole lot of people are going to get this reference, but it really stuck out to me.
I hope it's the one that I was going to say. I'm waiting on pins and needles because I'm wondering if it's the one that I was going to say. But go ahead, please.
Most likely not. The actress who played the French woman at the party.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so she was played by an actress named, she's a Canadian actress named Emmanuelle Vaugier. I haven't seen her in anything. I don't know her personally, but I've seen a lot of her because back in my very first gig in the video game industry, I worked on one of the Need for Speed games at EA. And she is featured prominently in the story cinematics. And when you boot up the game, she gives this quick PSA about responsible and safe driving or what have you, and how all the stunts and the full motion videos are all fake or whatever. And so I saw her pretty much every goddamn day when I had to boot up that game when I was a tester. Hi, I'm Emmanuelle Vaugier.
Hi, I'm Emmanuelle Vaugier. The moves that you and your crew do in the game are meant to stay in the game. In the real world, drive safe, obey the laws of the road, always wear your seatbelt.
So when I saw her in this,
herself in Need for Speed.
Well, in the cinematic, she was playing the protagonist's estranged girlfriend or whatever. But in the PSA, she was "Hi, I'm Emmanuelle Vaugier, and we had a lot of fun here on the set of Need for Speed Carbon. But there's nothing fun about not wearing a seatbelt or some shit
that is such a very Simpsons type humor.
Yeah.
Ha 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 ha. Hi, I'm Troy McClure.
That's a very Troy McClure moment. Yeah, I've always found it very weird as someone who's never really sat down and played the Need for Speed franchise. I always found it very strange that they have the live action cutscenes. No other video game did that outside of the Sega CD Night Trap era. So it's very odd to me when you see a modern video game that has just regular actors. Lots of video games use actors for their cutscenes, but often they're kind of digitally scanned and they're kind of stories that look like the actors playing them.
Yeah, those Need for Speed games were, I want to say, the end of that era, because they did a lot of that in the story-based point and click stuff of Sega CD days.
No, but the actress that I was going to say, Jameson, that I was very thrilled to see pop up in this is the actress that played the mom from the opening 30 minutes of this, which we'll get to when we talk about the plot, which we should probably start doing fairly soon. It's fine. But the actress who plays the mother who hires the Shadow Warriors is an actress named Lisa Schrage, who hasn't done a lot, but notably she is the titular character in a movie that I watched last year that ended up being my favorite movie that I watched in 2020 that wasn't from 2020, which is a list that I keep on Letterboxd. She is the titular character in Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2. Maybe one of the best supernatural slasher movies from the 1980s. It is phenomenal. It is such an underrated classic. It's also one of the best episodes of How Did This Get Made? But I would recommend watching the movie before listening to that episode. Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2 is basically like, what if Freddy Krueger were also Carrie? Because it's about this prom queen who dies in a violent way on prom night, and then she comes back as like this supernatural figure. Again, it's another Canadian shot horror movie. I believe it was shot in Toronto. It has like great 80s practical effects. There's this evil demonic rocking horse with a big rubber tongue. There's this phenomenal practical effect with a chalkboard where someone gets sucked into it. Overall, the Prom Night series is a really odd series of films because the first Prom Night, which you can absolutely skip, is just this standard maniac escapes from a lunatic asylum, goes to the prom and kills a bunch of people. Prom Night 2 and Prom Night 3 are about this Mary Lou character, and they were totally trying to make her like a Freddy or a Jason or something like that, because she keeps popping up and making like wisecracks. But then for Prom Night 4, and the remake, they go back to the killer escapes and kills a bunch of people. So it's a wildly uneven series that I watched last year, but I would highly recommend Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2. I think that movie's fucking phenomenal. And she pops up in here, and weirdly enough, this was her last movie role.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah. She's stopped after that.
Huh. I mean, it's so funny how you mentioned, the whole thing about Carrie, because, I mean, man, you talk about cult classics, that one was definitely a cult classic, but I mean, like, I mean, the premise of it being a horror movie was actually very interesting, although, I mean, there were different renditions of Carrie, and one of them, they altered the ending, believe it or not. There's a 2002 version.
They played around with the ending of Carrie as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they had different endings for the original Brian De Palma Carrie.
Yeah.
They also had a TV remake of Carrie in the early 2000s.
2002.
That was meant to be the pilot episode of a Carrie TV series, and pointedly, she survives the end of that because they wanted to keep it going.
Well, they wanted to make Carrie a more, like, a not so frightening character, but a very sympathetic character, and, it's...
Which I'd argue she already was in the first Carrie.
Yeah.
I mean, she's a very sympathetic
But
character.
but instead of making her, being the one whose hand pops out of the pile of bricks and grabs somebody, so instead it's like the people that she killed are the ones that come out of nowhere and try to kill her, that kind of deal. But side topic itself, we should talk about Carrie another time for sure.
Yeah, well, for anyone wanted to watch Carrie but wished Carrie was kind of a bitch, watch Prom Night 2. That movie's fucking phenomenal. It's on Amazon. I highly recommend streaming that. But anyway,
so Mary Lou goes
hand,
to visit the Shadow Warriors.
Let's go visit the Shadow Warriors, brothers.
Exactly.
So that Mary Lou lady goes to visit the Shadow Warriors. It's been a couple of years since their adventure on Devil's Island, and now they've set up this, like, I want to say private security firm or
they're
something
free
or other.
agents. They're not working with any government affiliation.
Just like the APA and WWF.
Exactly. It's this massive compound where Shannon Tweed is kickboxing and Carl Weathers is chiseling some statues.
Shit, hardcore sculpting.
And she says, my daughter has been, this is like not the main plot, but this is sort of the opening action sequence.
Yeah, this
like
is
very
what's
much in the vein of like a Mission Impossible movie. Like this is how we kind of get reintroduced to these characters. She says, my daughter has been kidnapped by my estranged husband who's like this European billionaire who's evil or whatever. I saw your ad because apparently like these private mercenary groups just like put out classified ads.
They're just in the white pages.
And she's like, I want you to go get her back. And they say,
so
sure.
we should clarify, again, for the people who have not watched the first Shadow Warriors. The Shadow Warriors team is Hulk Hogan as Mike McBride. This is the only time we're going to be listing the character names because from this point on, we're just going to be calling them by the actor names.
Exactly.
Mike McBride. Shannon Tweed is Hunter Wiley, which is an amazing name. Carl Weathers is Roy Brown. And then, of course, the most integral member of the Shadow Warriors team, Derek. Motherfucking Derek, who is played by an actor named Mike White, who is not, of course, the Mike White who wrote School of Rock and Chuck and Buck and other movies like this. Before we really get into this plot, I just want to take a minute and read Mike White's biography from IMDb that I am almost 100% certain was written by Mike White himself.
This should be fun.
Prior to becoming an actor, Mike had an 11-year career as a member of the Navy SEALs, the world's most elite military unit, attaining the rank of lieutenant commander. In college, he was an all-Southeastern Conference football player at the University of Alabama, playing for legendary coach Paul Bear Bryant. Mike also had brief stints in the NFL with the New York Giants and Miami Dolphins. Leaving the industry in 2002, Mike utilized his special military skills, working in the world of executive protection. In the Seattle area, Mike was a full-time member of Bill Gates and Melinda Gates' security team. He was later hired by Bruce Springsteen as his personal bodyguard during his 2003 Rising tour. Today, Mike lives in Alabama and is the single father of 3 teenagers and a commercial real estate developer.
That sounds about right.
That was a mini biography. That was a biography submitted by darknessbeforedinner@hotmail.com.
Darkness Before Dinner.
I feel like the question we have to ask ourselves, Jameson, is should we email darknessbeforedinner@hotmail.com and ask him, A, are you Mike White? And B, will you be on our podcast? Because I feel like out of anyone, we could possibly get Mike White. Out of all celebrities.
Yeah. Yes to both. And
yes to both. All right, I'll get right on that.
That sounds appropriate. Like I was watching this movie, I was thinking to myself, I kind of wish there was Shadow Warriors 3 and that it was like centered all around Derek, because he is the most competent member of the Shadow Warriors group, and he seems to be a little too good for this team, and he doesn't really know it. So I want to kind of peel the layers back on this character, and his background for that character sounds exactly like what Mike
White's. He's more or less playing an extension of himself, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, because this very much was them trying to get a Shadow Warriors TV show going on here, and my big question at the end of this is what happened? Why aren't we up to Shadow Warriors 12 at this point, you know? It should be Prime Suspect on the BBC. We should just get a Shadow Warriors every couple of years. We don't even necessarily need Hulk Hogan in all of them because, let's address the elephant in the room. Hulk Hogan has some problematic views. I can understand as time goes on why, Carl Weathers might not want to associate with him. But I'm also just going to say it. Hulk Hogan, kind of the least interesting part of these movies. I'd be perfectly happy if we just got, the continuing adventures of Shannon Tweed, Carl Weathers, Sensei Kreese. We should have Shadow Warriors Origin, Derek by now, his entire, spin-off series. That's my 2 cents.
It should probably, it should be up there with the amount of sequels as The Land Before Time, for example.
Yeah. There are an absurd amount of those movies, yes. It's interesting to look at these specific actors and think about, what might have happened if they had continued making Shadow Warriors movie, because, the interesting thing right now is that 2 of the actors of this Shadow Warriors team are currently on 2 of the most successful streaming TV shows that are playing right now. We got Mandalorian and Cobra Kai. So 2 of the Shadow Warriors are doing incredibly well for themselves right now, so they might not need that Shadow Warriors money. Sorry, before we get back to the plot, as you were saying, Jameson, the opening 30 minutes of Shadow Warriors, Brother, don't actually end up having anything to do with the plot of the movie. It's structured in the way that a modern-day Simpsons episode is structured, where right before everything that happens before the first commercial break, not the plot of what we're talking about. It has nothing to do and it doesn't tie in, and once they rescue the kid, it's not about that anymore.
Alright, so they go to this rich Austrian guy's chalet in Grouse Mountain, Austria. And he's having this big party, so Hulk Hogan and Carl Weathers are in their special ops gear climbing the mountain. And Shannon Tweed is infiltrating this party. She's getting a layout of the land, spotting the security guards with her hidden camera, which is hidden in this massive sapphire necklace, which is completely noticeable, positioned next to her. She's in a low-cut dress, so of course people's eyes are going to be directed towards this hidden camera. But they find the daughter. She has this fight with the nanny, who holds her own quite well in the fight.
I did love this moment where with this unspecified actress playing the German nanny. Yeah, so Shannon Tweed kind of ushers the little girl out of the room, and she gives them to Carl Weathers, and she runs away, and then the German nanny comes in, and she's just like, "There is little girl! Ah!" And then she just like tackles Shannon Tweed like into like a fireplace. It's great.
I seriously thought Shannon Tweed was going to kick her into the fireplace.
I thought so too. Yeah.
Like, kick this evil woman into this roaring
She's not even,
in a child's
she's
playroom.
not even evil. Yeah, exactly. Just
unsupervised child, and she's
I'm glad I'm not alone on that thinking, because I was like thinking, yeah, kick her into the fire pit. It's gonna happen. Oh my god, it's gonna be like very sick and twisted. But I forgot this is a PG-13 rated film, so.
It is. Sadly, PG-13. I wouldn't even say it's PG-13. Like, there's no blood in this movie whatsoever.
No, of course not, no.
What I will say is that, unfortunately, I think, at the very least, what I have to admit is that the follow-up to the first Shadow Warriors Assault on Devil's Island, whatever we want to call it, it is a case of diminishing returns, sadly. Not quite this opening isn't quite as good as the first movie, both because it doesn't really have anything to do with the plot, and also because the opening of the first movie was them basically blowing up a small island and then exploding a shark. So that's a hard act to follow. One might say almost impossible, and they didn't quite try.
Yeah, I would say that Assault on Devil's Island kind of maintains like this ramp up of like cheesy action all the way through, and I would say like Shadow Warriors 2, Brother, takes a while to get to that territory. Like at first it's like very like it's cheesy all the way through, but it's not like laugh out loud cheesy. I'd say it kind of takes itself a little too seriously. There were moments like when they're escaping the chalet and Hulk Hogan is like hanging on the underside of the gondola.
Oh yeah.
And there's a henchman coming up the other side and he's like firing his gun and Hulk Hogan's like still hanging from the gondola and he's shooting back down at him. And you're just waiting for that moment where like the two gondolas cross and they like tackle each other midair or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, you can see to nitpick that one, a couple of those shots.
Please do. That's why we're here.
So in one shot, it looks like Hulk Hogan was hanging, thousands of feet away from the ground, right? But then, like, there's one shot where it feels like they're not that high above ground. And then you go back to the other shot, it's like, oh, now they're thousands of feet high above ground again.
You don't want to make it too dangerous for the stunt people, because I imagine they don't want to, they can't spend too much money on insurance for the stunt doubles. They got to save their, like, pyrotechnics budget for when they blow up the mining museum at the
Exactly.
Now, if we're going off of one of the many titles that have been attributed to this movie, this is kind of the only mountain in the movie. So is this Death Mountain?
Sure.
Is like the opening 30 minutes that don't actually have anything to do with the plot, is this the titular assault on Death Mountain? Because they don't really have... You can't really call, like, the mine near Horseshoe Bay a mountain. They don't really go up. So, I can see why, they might have changed titles here because, the assault on Death Mountain kind of wraps up fairly quickly. And then it becomes The Hunt for the Death Merchant, which is the more appropriate of the two titles because
I would say so, yeah.
They do indeed hunt for the Death Merchant. So speaking of, the titular Death Merchant, the one thing we haven't mentioned is that throughout this opening 30 minutes, Hulk Hogan is having some major PTSD. Something that I don't believe he had in the first movie.
Nope.
No. It's almost like because at first you would think, when you follow a character, like, an action character like Hulk Hogan, for example, when you're following an action character, there should usually be some references to the first plot in the first movie. But all we're seeing is Hulk Hogan getting flashbacks from a war he was in, basically. And this was
never brought up in the first movie.
Yeah, it was never explained in the first movie at all. I mean, maybe it's okay for Hulk Hogan to bring it up, which is okay, but it's almost like as if, I'd rather they had him bring up something from the first movie, which just for the sake of consistency and just for the sake of connection, because then that way it makes you want to watch the first movie if you haven't seen it yet. But I mean, they should be.
They do offhandedly reference, that business on Devil's Island a couple of times.
But that's about it.
That is
the only thing that really carries over of him from that first movie is that shark tooth necklace of his.
There you go. I remember that. Yes.
So because they are now like this freelance mercenary business, the Shadow Warriors, even though like their base of operations is called SOS. I don't know where the O comes in from that. But they have like a stack of papers of like the FBI's most wanted that I guess they just go after on their own. And there is a piece of paper with a picture of someone whose eyes like draw something from Hulk Hogan's repressed memory. And he's like, I remember these eyes. They're the eyes of Sarkeesian, this chemical warfare scientist that killed half my troops back in the Gulf War. And it's the eyes. I recognize those eyes anywhere. He must have had facial reconstruction surgery and shit. And
this is a really
that's been bothering him
setup,
for months,
yeah.
and now it's all come together.
The only thing that sort of supports it is during Hulk Hogan's early sort of PTSD flashback, he remembers, a bunch of his war buddies all getting gassed because Dr. Sarkeesian is like, he's like an evil gas man. He's like an evil chemical engineer.
Yeah.
And he captures all of Hulk Hogan's troops in some barbed wire, and then he does
That's
a
right.
chemical attack on them. And Hogan is the only one who is able to survive. But, yeah, the fact that the plot, as it is, gets going because Mike McBride remembers a wanted poster and kind of half-heartedly remembers that, like, the eyes of this one person that he looked at who was wearing a gas mask and he was only able to see his eyes. Like, it's a bit of a stretch in terms of believability.
More than that, like, Hulk Hogan was also wearing a gas mask.
Yeah.
And like and the gas was filling the room, so his vision would be obscured anyways. And like, he was in a state of adrenaline and panic. And he remembers these must be some piercing baby blues for him to
and that's the thing too, because like when they were trying to see if this villain actually did had plastic surgery, and digitize it to match the eyes, it's just like, well, I mean, okay, it would have been more memorable. I mean, if I were in a situation like Hulk Hogan's, for example, of course, I know it's a cheesy movie, but for sake of realism, I would have been like more about the smile, or like the look, like, the eyes and the mouth, for example. So if this guy had a sinister smile, for example, then it'd be like, okay, then now that's something that can be distinguishable out of everybody, right? That's how you can identify someone.
Or since we're throwing out hypotheticals here and rewriting this movie, what I feel like would have been better supported is if during the opening 30-minute assault on Death Mountain in this Austrian chalet or whatever, if this new Dr. Sarkeesian was like a guest at the party of like the evil Austrian billionaire, and like Hulk Hogan had like a moment where he was like in the shit and he was trying to get the little girl out, and he had like an interaction with just this random party guest, and maybe Sarkeesian like said something, it's all like that. Birds
or he has like
in
a really
June,
distinguished
or
laugh
like
or something.
Yeah,
Something that's
or something.
like,
Just tie it in somehow to this opening 30 minutes to
Exactly.
make it feel less unnecessary to the overall plot. Just having him remember a wanted poster is really asking a lot of us, the audience.
Yeah, and honestly, that'd be great. So imagine, that bastard father and, and of course our main villain, they had some sort of like, dirty business deal behind closed doors as well. Because everyone, I mean, I'll tell you this, action movie fans love it when villains team up and it's like the ultimate dream fantasy, right? So why not go all the way with that? I mean, what they could do with Hulk Hogan's flashback. Okay, so if this story was not related to the first movie, okay, fine. So what they could do is maybe do a scene where Hulk Hogan actually sits down with the crew, tell the whole story, and actually have a scene where they're showing the war that Hulk Hogan was in. That way, instead of like, little pockets of flashbacks, cause it only paints a very small portion of the picture. What they should do instead is just have a scene dedicated to that. Like it's, alone, but the war scene itself. And that way we have a much clearer picture of where the hell Hogan was coming from and why was he having these flashbacks entirely.
They try to do a little narrative shortcut as well, because they include the thing that this sort of like battle that he was in, everything like that. Carl Weathers and Derek were also with him. So it's like, they only have to retell the story to Shannon Tweed, because she joined the Shadow Warriors after the fact. So yeah, every mission that Hulk Hogan was on, the other two Shadow Warriors were only with them. So they kind of already know the deal. They know who Sarkeesian is and everything.
Yeah. He's like, he's dead, Hogan. Like, you don't worry about him. You're seeing things in that poster, which I would totally be on the same page with them. It's funny that this, or the first Assault on Devil's Island movie was like a made-for-TV movie pilot for what was supposed to be a TV series, because it seems like between the Austrian bad guy and the Dr. Sarkeesian guy could have been like these long-running villains that would like team up in a season finale, or would like have like these different story arcs through like the regular season of a TV show. But instead they're like, we're not going to get a TV series. Let's just combine these guys in like the second movie, and we'll do like none of the heavy lifting.
Wrong, but Billy Drago's drug lord from the first movie doesn't end up dying, right? They end up sending him to jail, so he could eventually come back, right? Yeah.
Okay, so when I first saw the first part of that movie, when they showed, the bastard father, I thought that was the guy from the first one. I actually did.
Oh, the same character? Yeah.
Because at first I was like, oh snap, he's back! But then I realized, oh wait a minute,
they recasted him, but he's
the
back.
return of Cocaine Pants McGee.
In the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, one of the more comforting news stories I heard related to an area of BC shoreline long used as a trade shipping route, where once a bustling human activity made the area uninhabitable to the sea life. But the decline in commercial vehicles allowed small ponds and schools of sea creatures to return to the area. It was a feel-good, nature is healing story, quickly undercut by the realization that the demands of the global population and the threatened livelihoods of families impacted by the closing of these shipping routes meant this piece of pleasant news wasn't going to last once the world opened up again. But I say to that, why not? Why not have a sustainable economy that relies on a healthy environment and vice versa? As it stands, our current economy is dependent on ever-increasing growth and resource extraction, which is fundamentally at odds with the social and environmental needs of our shared thoughts on financial stability and addressing climate change. But an economy can and should suit the needs of the people and the planet. So for today's charity spot, I want to highlight two long-standing Canadian organizations that echo these sentiments. EcoTrust Canada supports communities, many of them Indigenous in remote areas long exploited by extraction and commodification, in creating change as active participants who take the lead in defining their own futures, as well as innovating alternative, tangible projects and solutions aimed at challenging the status quo. And also Eco-Justice, who believe in the power of legal precedent to deliver lasting solutions to urgent environmental problems, be it keeping governments to their word on economic and environmental standards, to holding businesses and polluters accountable to their mistakes, and ensuring communities have a say in the environmental and economic policy decisions in their provinces. If you would like to donate or participate in either of these programs, please learn how to do so at canadahelps.org/en/d/m/410/donation or at ecojustice.ca/takeaction. What that does, this gives us an excuse to be reintroduced to the John Kreese. The actor's name is Martin Cove.
Andy Powers, who is like their government guy. He's like the only guy that isn't like a free agent. He actually has like ties to the government. He's kind of like their equipment man, because he gets them like mini subs and vehicles and guns and stuff.
Eddie, sorry, but can I just ask you, because like you saw this movie recently, in the first movie, he was just sort of like their government handler who was like no nonsense and like, you gotta do things by the books, but when he realizes the gymnasts are in danger, he's like, alright, I'm gonna stick my neck out for you, Hogan, here's everything you need to go after these guys. Yeah. Is that fair to say? So he's like he's not a silly character.
No, but then in the second one, he seems a little bit more sillier.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the jump between how Joe Pesci was kind of funny in Lethal Weapon 2, and then in Lethal Weapon 3, he's basically like a cartoon character. Yeah, they really kind of up the comedy of Andy Powers. I have a lot to say about Andy Powers. So the first thing I want to start off with, probably my favorite music cue in the entire movie,
the Seinfeld
is
theme?
The introductory Andy Powers theme. I'm fairly certain this is just the Seinfeld theme song, but like the notes are kind of out of order.
It's altered.
I'll play it now.
It's a spoof Seinfeld theme, and it's just remixed in a way, basically.
He gets demoted, I suppose, to like just working at like some surplus office called Building 12 that apparently is hard to find in this building, and now he is just like this fucking used car salesman type character.
Okay, something that I absolutely must talk about is Andy Powers' outfit. Because this thing is fucking incredible. As soon as I saw it, first of all, he has bleach blonde his hair, so it's blonde Martin Cove. But he's got maroon shirt, orange tie, pants up to his waist, blue and orange suspenders. We think that that's it. We think that that's the end of it. No, because when he leaves the scene, big white scarf, brown duster. This is an incredible outfit. I think I may have found my Halloween costume. This is
honestly,
an incredible costume that he's got going on here.
And the minute he puts on that big white scarf, I mean, for us Vancouvers, we instantly think West fan.
Yes.
Yeah. He's trying to blend in, yeah.
Have either of you heard Bill Hader's story about Martin Cove?
No, never had.
Bill Hader told a story on the WTF podcast with Mark Maron. I suggest everyone look it up because he tells it a lot better than I do. But what I'll summarize it here. Back before Bill Hader was famous, he was like a personal assistant and a driver. And one of his first jobs was he was the driver of Martin Cove. And there was one day where Martin Cove got him lost on purpose because he hadn't memorized his lines yet for the movie that he was doing. So he got Bill Hader to drive him around the block a bunch, and when they finally got to the set, Bill Hader got in trouble because Martin Cove was late to the set. So later that night, when they were driving back to the hotel or whatever, Martin Cove from the back seat was like, Bill, are you mad at me? I'm sorry I got you in trouble. Look, there's a McDonald's up there. How about I buy you a milkshake and a chocolate chip cookie? How about that? And Bill Hader was just like, all right, sure. A guy wants to apologize, sure. And Martin Cove's like, great. What kind of milkshake do you want? And Bill Hader was like, a chocolate milkshake. It's all like, great. Okay, I'm going to go get you a chocolate milkshake and a chocolate chip cookie. Hold on. And Martin Cove walked into the McDonald's and then a few minutes later walked out, drinking the milkshake, eating the chocolate chip cookie, and he got into the back of the car. He's like, all right, let's go. Just like this weird flex on like this unknown guy who later turned out to be famed comic actor Bill Hader.
That was a
great story.
Sounds like a dick move, man.
Yeah, it's just like a weird power trip.
Yeah.
Fucking Martin. And what's twice as funny after, like last year watching season 2 and 3 of Cobra Kai, it's like, that is 100% something John Kreese would do. It's very believable.
Yeah. Oh, very. It's almost like Cove is pretty much John Kreese.
Pretty much, yeah. He's so good in that show. Oh my god.
Oh, he's great. He's one of the best parts of that show. That's a great show.
Yeah.
Anyways, through like facial recognition software, they determined that like, oh shit, Sarkeesian did get facial reconstruction. We got to tell Hulk Hogan, but we don't know where he is. And Carl Weathers like, I have a pretty good idea.
So can I talk about? I love this transition. This is also my favorite transition in the entire thing. First of all, it's my favorite overall Derek line. It's the three of them in like the office. Martin Cove puts his big-ass scarf on, and when they leave the office, Derek is, like, about to knock on the door. And a great line reading from Mike White was all like, hey, you finally showed up. And he just goes, I've been looking for this place for 45 minutes. Great line reading, happy in stitches. But
with
then
that
the transition
evil eye of his.
Yeah, you can see that, like, the vein in his forehead. Like, genuinely good acting there. And then when Carl Weathers says, I think I know where he is, hard cut to Saudi Arabia. What I didn't notice until, cause I rewatched the movie, I kinda like fast forwarded through the movie an hour before we started recording. What I didn't notice until this go around is we have the text pop up on the bottom of the screen. It says, Yanba al-Bayer, Saudi Arabia. So they misspell Saudi Arabia as Saudi Arabia, which is something that I didn't catch this time around. But then I'm like, and I typed in Yanba al-Bayer, not a place at all. There's a Yanbu al-Bar, Saudi Arabia, but there is no such place as Yanba al-Bayer, Saudi Arabia. So, good job whoever was writing those
I think it's right.
interstitials.
Hey, my guess is they're probably trying to avoid getting in trouble, if that makes sense.
Fair enough.
Sure.
But then come up with like a generic Middle Eastern name. Don't call it Saudi
I
Arabia. That makes
love it
it sound
when
like you don't know
comic
what you're
books
talking
come up
about.
with like fictional countries or cities, like Madripoor or Latveria or what have you.
Riverdale.
Whoa, hold on. Madripoor is not a real place? Because I just watched Falcon and Winter Soldier and Madripoor looked dope. I was going to spend some vacation time there, so
You would want a vacation there? It's a
breaking my heart.
haven.
Yeah, I know. I want to get like some black market shit. I want to get,
Anyway, so Hulk Hogan storms this terrorist camp with 2 machine guns.
Yeah.
One underneath his armpit, if I recall, I think.
Yeah, like this fucking Serious Sam style, one-man army sequence, which is great. Like total video game character logic where, people are like trying to sneak up behind him and like 180 turn around and shoot the guy.
He just rambled everybody in that scene.
Yeah, it was awesome. And he gets knocked out by a big dude with a mohawk. and he encounters Dr. Sarkeesian, who injects him with this poison that will kill him in 72 hours. You know, instead of killing him right there and there, he wants to give him that.
Well, he's the poison guy. That's his whole deal. You know, it's all like you get a gimmick and you gotta stick with it. So, yeah. But then the other Shadow Warriors all show up. I guess they went immediately from wherever they were straight to Saudi Arabia, because they show up moments after he gets captured.
They show up in the fucking warthog from Halo and start gunning people down. It's great. Like, I love the use of, like, dirt bikes and gun-mounted dune buggies, and, you know, there's Derek behind a sand dune just acting as a sniper. Acting as a sniper, but keeping, like, one eye, like, both of his eyes had to have been open. And how snipering works is you gotta keep the one eye not in the scope closed.
Yeah.
Well, we all know movie sniping is not tantamount to actual real-world sniping. Much like shooting any gun is not the same in a movie as it is in real life. It's quite a complicated, violent act, shooting a gun, and you would not be able to have two giant guns under the arm as Hulk Hogan does in this movie, but, you know, it's fucking Shadow Warriors, man. Come on, we're not going by real world logic here. So the movie does jump ahead. It is, you know, like an hour and a half TV movie, but I did write down, he's injected with the poison. He has 72 hours. And then we cut back to the States or whatever. Now he has 22 hours. So they're factoring in travel time, which I did appreciate. But then after they figure out that is in Horseshoe Bay and they're starting the final assault on the bad guy, he only has 2 hours left. So we go from 72 to 22 to 2 incredibly quickly.
So it's like, what did he do in between those hours that we've missed?
Wasn't he getting, like, they were trying to administer a cure, or they were testing his blood to see if they can find an antidote?
Well, I know there was that scene where
that one nurse was like, hey, you can't leave.
There was a scene where they had to look at the virus, right? And it was just like... Yeah. It's like, I don't know what we're going to do about it.
There's only one cure for the virus that's running wild in me, brother. And that's
the cure of the Hulkamaniacs. Yeah.
There ain't no cure for Hulkamania. So, yeah, Sarkeesian mentions that, like, I'm going to launch a rocket with a germ warfare payload in it somewhere from Western Canada. Guess where?
Yes, and the target is Seattle, which is where we find out Shannon Tweed's up until now not mentioned at all teenage daughter lives, which I can only assume is a plot point that they introduced for future Shadow Warriors TV projects. But that is a character that is mentioned to add like I guess like a little bit of like personal conflict for Shannon Tweed, even though she doesn't really try very hard to get a hold of her daughter. You get the feeling that they're kind of estranged. But still, like, the only thing that happens is that she calls and gets her answering machine message, but, you know, doesn't leave any sort of, like, warning, like, hey, I know we don't talk very often, I know you don't approve of what I do, but maybe get out of town for a little while. But no, she doesn't leave any sort of warning for her daughter.
You know what I really appreciate most about that daughter subplot that's hardly mentioned? There's a scene when they're just like gearing up to go for their final assault. Yeah. And she and Derek have a little moment, and he says something to her like, you know, Shannon Tweed, like, you're a good mother. And she says like, no, I'm not. Look at what I do for a living.
Yeah.
But the look on her face when she says that, she had to have stopped acting for like half a second and kind of sunk in what that line truly meant to her as a person.
Yeah, because Shannon Tweed is a fantastic actor. We are Shannon Tweed stans on this. We're Shans.
This movie came out after we saw No Contest, where she was arguably the best part of that movie. She was the competent like action heroine lead and quite good in that movie. And now she's doing schlock like Assault on Death Mountain or whatever. Well, she had to have been like, oh, what the fuck happened to my career?
I love No Contest, and Eddie, that is 100% a movie that we highly recommend. You gotta check that out.
No Contest,
No Contest is basically Die Hard at a beauty pageant. And
Roddy Piper's in it.
And John McClane is played by Shannon Tweed, and Hans Gruber is played by Andrew Dice Clay. So yeah, it's fucking phenomenal. You definitely gotta check that out. I love No Contest, but No Contest is schlock. Shannon Tweed she swam in the river of schlock, and we love her and we appreciate it for her. The one thing that I will say, the one minor criticism I'll say about Tweed's performance in this, if we're gonna talk Tweed, is that she's a little bit off in terms of her action beats. There were a couple of moments where someone throws a punch at her and she takes maybe a beat longer than necessary to hit them back. There's a moment in the party earlier where she's kind of sneaking around and a security guard comes up to her and he's all like, "Excuse me, ma'am, can I help you?"
Oh,
and
yeah, at the party, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and she takes a beat too much and she's like, "Oh God, my leg!" And he's all like, "Oh, fine." It's all like,
it's like
not quite as fast as you could have given that line there.
Yeah,
Shan.
because if I were that guy working at the party, I'd be a little suspicious already. Be like, oh wait, how come out of nowhere she just twisted her ankle, right? So
Well, but Eddie, you're forgetting, the most important part of that scene is that Shannon Tweed has boobs.
Oh yes, that's true.
Yes, which is how she got as far as she did.
I knew that guy was gonna gawk at her that way.
Oh, those scenes where they're showing like the perspective of the hidden camera of okay, here's some security guards, and there's just some security guards looking directly at her chest. It's like,
Yeah. Okay. I mean, for the record, it feels like party, right? And the quality of the production of the video and all that stuff too. I'm not gonna lie and say this. It does remind me of watching a very cheesy porn with some interesting plot.
Well, this is made around the same time and by some of the same production crew that did a lot of Baywatch.
Oh, okay. That explains a lot.
Or at least the first one did.
What you just said, Eddie, about a very cheesy porn with a bit of a plot. That is 80% of the movie Shannon Tweed made. So
exactly.
That was her wheelhouse.
Oh, exactly.
She had zero qualms
they're not
with
all
showing
Shadow
her body.
Warriors or no contest. So they storm the mining facility. Well, they don't storm it. They try to infiltrate it. Do you want to wait?
Rocket, yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to wait for Eddie, or do you want to?
No. For those listening at home, Eddie very quietly and unnoticeably held up a little dry erase board that said, "Gotta pee, be right back," with the intention, I'm sure, of not interrupting the podcast. We're not about that here, so we're letting everyone know right now that Eddie has left the room to do his business.
By contrast, one of the hosts of this show, have gotten up multiple times to polish off a bottle of wine that my girlfriend and I were sharing last night.
A little bit of day drinking.
A little bit of the bubbly.
That's
well,
great.
actually, this kind of ties in because this year my friends and I didn't do our annual WrestleMania tradition.
Your Winomania, yes.
We didn't do Winomania this year because A, the episode that we recorded, Accidental Love, was on the same day as WrestleMania, and B, Scott Murray, who normally would host for us, couldn't do it this year because of family responsibilities. So no Winomania this year, but because we're discussing a Hogan movie and I had some leftover wine, the spirit of Winomania continues.
And of course, for clarity's sake, I of course have been peeing this entire time. So, Eddie, welcome back. So, they storm Horseshoe Bay. This is kind of like the last 30 minutes of this movie. It's funny, we've talked the most about the first 30 minutes and the last 30 minutes, and then the hour in between, we're kind of just all like, and that happened.
Yeah.
But,
well, it's a quick movie. It's a very relaxed short movie, which in this era of massive blockbuster epics that are pushing the 2 hour and 30-minute mark, it's kind of nice to see just a quaint hour and 45-minute actioner.
It's the whole movie was only an hour and a half, basically. And it just didn't feel long at all either. I told you guys in a private conversation, right? My wife and I were watching the Billie Eilish documentary that came out on Apple TV, so we watched it on Wednesday, and that one dragged on. It almost felt like I was watching for 3 hours, and yet she's still a new star, and I'm just like, whoa, 3 hours of this brand new star? It would make sense if it was the Who or the Beatles or Rolling Stones, but Billie Eilish, But speaking of fame, though, too, at the same time, it's just wow, and here's someone going back to the movie, speaking of fame, here's somebody as famous as Hulk Hogan, who's been in the wrestling world for years and eons, right? At the same time, you got Shannon Tweed that's in there, right? And all that. It's like an all-star cast of a movie, which is crazy. But we have an hour and a half of these guys. It's an hour and a half of these folks. You would have thought, maybe with an all-star cast, you could probably, have a little bit more time, a little bit more fun with these folks, right? Make use of their time in a way, right?
I don't know. I would argue that you get a lot of bang for your buck with this kind of movie. If you were to charge a reasonable $7 at the cinema to watch a quick little movie like this.
Yeah.
Now you've activated I'm over here salivating, I can't. cannot fucking wait to get back into a movie theater. And
yeah,
if I was watching something as dumb as Shadow Warriors on a big screen, I'd still appreciate it. To touch on what you were just saying, Eddie, I mean, we've spent all this time talking about this movie. We've been talking about, you know, the various people in it and everything. We've been spotlighting everything. We haven't spent a ton of time talking about Carl Weathers. And that's largely because Carl Weathers doesn't really have a ton to do this time around. So, yeah, they didn't really spread out, you know, like the action over the course of all of the characters. They kind of front-loaded it with Hulk Hogan, and then they gave, like, the comedic beats to Martin Kove this time around.
Yeah.
And Tweed and Weathers are just kind of hanging out.
And so funny how you mentioned Carl Weathers, because he is, to me, one of the main definitions of action hero actors, right?
Yes.
And with him being the Mandalorian recently, obviously, I mean, it just shows. I mean, okay. I mean, you think about people like Arnold, you think about people like Stallone, you think about people like Van Damme, and then you have Bruce Willis. You know, what do they all have in common? Well, a lot of them, they do action movies, right? I mean, we see, you know, there's that big movie with all those guys in it. What was that called again?
The Expendables.
Expendables.
Expendables, yeah, there you go.
Which, like, you know, Expendables 4, if that ever happens, get Carl Weathers in there.
I would say so.
They've had 3 of those, and they haven't gotten him
but
yet.
even like for female actors who've actually done a lot of action films too. I mean, think about that too. Michelle Rodriguez, who was in Resident Evil, she was in SWAT.
She's in all of the Fast and Furious.
Didn't they make a female Expendables?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did one with, like, I think, like, Cynthia Rothrock and you know, like, the female action heroes. I don't think it went very
But not
far,
the ones that you would hope would be in there. Like, I think, like, Mila Jovovich was out of it, or she was in it, and she was one of the main draws.
They were talking about doing like a
Weaver wasn't in
Hollywood
it, so it's
female
like,
Expendables, but they never quite got around to it.
Right.
Yeah, I think they were talking about, you could do it now. Like, there's so many more female action heroes, and all female Expendables would be easy to do. You could get, like, Charlize Theron in there. You could get, who else kicks ass? Well, I was gonna say Gina Carano, but no, don't put her in anything anymore. But, yeah.
I mean, but just going back to what Carl, you know, the whole thing with Carl Weathers being like the action hero actor, you know, it's like he is your go-to guy. It's like, you know, he fits such a role of being the voice of reason action hero kind of guy too. It's just like he's trying to talk some sense into you. It's like, are you sure you want to do this? I don't know if that's a good idea. You know, we should do this instead. Well, kind of guy.
There's
funny to that,
sorry.
there's an awesome moment where he and Hogan are about to storm like the main laboratory in this mine.
Yeah, that's right.
To stop the rocket, and Hogan gets another one of his PTSD thing, and he freezes up. And Carl Weathers says, like, "It's okay, man. I'll take care of the rocket. Yeah. You know, like I want to be here for you, but you know, someone has to stop this thing. I can totally manage that myself." And he goes and does that. He's like a very like non-judgmental, I got this kind of guy. No arrogance about him. Here's the job that's got to be done.
He is.
You know, there's two leads in this movie,
he's like,
and like you're the other guy. I got to do this main thing for you. But what he can't do is actually stop the launch. There's a moment where like one of the lab technicians looks directly at the camera and says, "I've overridden the shutdown. You know, it can't be stopped."
Right.
And then he can't do it. So he's got to wait for Shannon Tweed, who apparently knows computers.
And at least he can say he is that teammate that you really want. It's like he's a teammate that we can always rely on.
The Shadow Warriors could just be him and Derek.
Yeah, that's true.
And Shannon Tweed. I would argue they would need that in there. It's like I said earlier, the only member that doesn't necessarily need to be a member of the Shadow Warriors is Hulk Hogan. He's kind of the least interesting member. He's clearly the weakest actor out of everybody here. And of course, as time and context has revealed, kind of a racist, so it's fine. We don't need him in there past Shadow Warriors 3. Like, have him, like, sacrifice himself for the team, and then, you know, have them honor Mike McBride's legacy.
Yeah.
I also want to, since I'm dunking on Hogan right now, it absolutely has to be said, he looks like a bag of dog food in these movies. Like, he just does not look good. It's because he has the long hair, but no beard and no mustache, which is a terrible look for Hulk Hogan.
It's an interesting combination, I'll say that for sure. But even then, see, my wife and I, we talked about this. Like, when you go back to the old days of Hogan in his early years wrestling in the 80s, he still looked old back then, too.
Yeah.
Like, basically, he's just a naturally born old guy. Like even, I remember
he's got that leathery skin and
I remember like my dad would always be like, why is Hogan wrestling? He's too old, but he's only like, at the time he'd be like only 40 something, but still my dad would just be like, whoa, like he looks like he's like a senior citizen or something.
Well, that's the curse of the early balding man and everything like that, where he was clearly balding, but he also had the super long hair in the back, so he just had like that early hillbilly look to him.
I mean,
anyway.
Say what you will about Hulk Hogan, that is an identifiable look.
That's a look.
The skull and the handlebar mustache, that sticks in your mind.
It's his identity. It's his identity, but I mean, we could argue though at the same time it's that, well, he kind of got that little inspiration from, what's the other wrestler? Superstar Billy Graham.
Oh, really?
He's got that, Superstar Billy Graham has something similar to where he's got like, the mustache and everything, and I think he's still kicking around if I recall, but.
Not wrestling though, I imagine.
Oh no, he's not wrestling anymore, but like, he's still kicking around, just happily retired, that's all. But yeah, but a lot of people have said that the Hulk Hogan kind of got some of that, that look and that sort of an influence from Superstar Billy Graham somehow.
But no mustache in this movie, and, add into the fact that he's injected with poison, so he's getting, like, weaker and grosser looking as the movie goes on. Point where, at the end where he's holding on to the hovercraft, he looks like the Toxic Avenger.
Spoiler
he looks
alert!
terrible.
Hold on.
So, yeah.
Okay, so let's start, because, like, this is, I think, is when the movie really, like, picks up. So, Shannon Tweed gets made as they're, like, trying to infiltrate the mine. And the only way that they can, like, get out of this mine is to just, like, let chaos reign. So they start detonating a lot of bombs around the mine. Derek just starts, like, shooting up the joint.
So they just leap in logic. While everyone has, like, their own little mission and they're exploding things, of course, Andy Powers comes in the helicopter and he's just, like, shooting things and blowing things up and making quips.
He's
and just
the best!
being generally awesome.
He's dropping grenades from, like, the cockpit of the helicopter. He's, like, got, like, he's got, like, a handgun, and he's like shooting people from the cockpit of his helicopter.
Yeah, and of course, near the ending, we all know what happens when the rocket launched and everything. But yeah, oh my goodness,
firing the rocket launcher from the helicopter cockpit seat.
There was a real missed opportunity where there's a shot where he's in the helicopter, like looking for things to fire and shoot. And there's one point where he picks up a flashlight, kind of looks at it, and then tosses it over his shoulder. The next cut is like a goon on the ground with a gun. I totally thought that flashlight was going to fall on his head. I was a little disappointed that it didn't just conk him out. I thought that was a missed opportunity.
Oh man, like the goon work during this helicopter fight is amazing. There are two incredible shots involving henchmen. One is where this one goon who must have been like first day on the job, like real noob on the server moment, he is running downhill and looking up to the side, firing at the helicopter. And he gets gunned down immediately, both by the helicopter and by Derek. He is just the worst fucking henchman. And there's another dude who is like sprinting at Shannon Tweed with like double wielding two guns. Style, absolute fucking GoldenEye FPS logic with some of these henchmen. And of course they get mowed down immediately. It's hilarious.
It makes the stormtroopers look more skilled than these guys.
These guys have no ability to aim. Everyone's firing guns wildly, and the only people who are getting shot are the goons from the Shadow Warriors themselves. So,
which, like, as you do in action movies, right? Like, the heroes have got to win, but, like, I gotta appreciate, like, good henchman death scenes. Like, the guys who, like, get shot off a roof, and then they're like, ah! And they do an overdramatic, like, front flip over the roof as they're dying.
Yeah. It's kind of like how,
stuff like that. If you're not gonna be an asset to your boss as, like, your villainous boss, at least make your death memorable.
It's almost like, how, like, in wrestling, when, say, for example, how Ric Flair does his infamous, flip over the turnbuckle and then he kind of flips back into the ring and then he just flops like a fish.
Just like an absolute sell where, like, he'll flip over his head and then he'll kind of stagger.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
signature. Or same thing, when Rikishi, every time he gets clothesline, he flips around, and then he falls on the ground.
Great sell.
Oh yeah,
amazing. It defies physics, but it's an amazing sell.
Oh, incredible sell for sure.
This still is the moment here that really stretches the line of believability. So all the other Shadow Warriors are running around doing their thing. Carl Weathers is trying to dismantle the rocket. Shannon Tweed and Derek are blowing people up. During this moment, Hulk Hogan sees Dr. Sarkisian in sort of his little like lab area, which is kind of cordoned off, and he's working on his evil poison with his evil scientist henchman. And the moment that really stretches the level of believability is Hulk Hogan walks over to a computer terminal and seals Dr. Sarkeesian in, and then releases the poison so that now Dr. Sarkeesian has the poison in him.
I'm sorry, exactly
Mike
how to do
McBride
that.
does not know how to walk up to any computer and just be like, beep, beep, beep. Okay, now I know what to do.
And that's the first thing that came to mind. It's just like, Hulk Hogan knows how to use a computer? Really?
Yeah.
In the 90s?
How on earth did he know
Between two
specifically how to
movies
do
that we've seen this
series
character
of
in,
things?
like, between these two movies, like, I don't even know if Mike McBride even owns a computer. I don't even know if Hulk Hogan owns a computer.
But he knows exactly what to do on this computer terminal to get exactly what he wants. Now,
Yeah.
okay, this is a legitimate question that I do not know the answer to. So, Hulk Hogan, Mike McBride, releases the same poison that's in his veins, but he releases is like an airborne toxin, and Dr. Sarkeesian breathes it in, and within minutes, he appears to be at the same level of poisoned as Hulk Hogan, who has had this poison in him for 72 hours. Is there a difference between injecting poison into the veins and then inhaling it? I would think you would get more sick if you injected it, right?
I think they're different poisons. I think like the injection one was specifically like, I want to make you suffer, so I want to give you 72 hours notice. This bomb that we're going to launch in front of Shannon Tweed's daughter, that is a fast-acting-ish poison.
Instant death,
and the
basically.
only reason he doesn't die right away is because Hulk Hogan gets in a kerfuffle with one of the Sarkeesian's goons, and he throws him through a window,
Yeah.
so Sarkeesian escapes just in time enough to like not die right away.
I knew
I
he was
thought
going
it
to break
was-
that glass.
sorry.
I knew he was going to break
Yeah.
that glass for sure.
Yeah.
Well, but the reason I thought it was the same poison is because apparently it's the same antidote. Because Sarkeesian runs to like an upper lab, grabs an antidote, and then escapes via hovercraft. And then as Hulk Hogan's holding on to the end of it, Jameson's laughing as I'm saying that because it's an objectively awesome sentence.
Guys,
but
I
he's holding on
gotta
to it.
ask, how
the goon-
excited were you when you saw that hovercraft
It was
burst
pretty
out
good.
of the warehouse?
It was pretty good. I mean, once it's on the water, it's awesome.
Yes.
Making your escape, as a supervillain, making your escape on a hovercraft on land, maybe not the best idea. Not terribly fast hovercrafts on land.
No.
But he does manage to get away. But it's the same antidote that the two of them are fighting over. So it must be roughly the same poison that's going through their veins.
Probably.
Anyway, Sarkeesian seems to be immediately sick though, so I don't know, that's just some poison science that I don't understand there.
I mean, the last time I saw a hovercraft on ground like that in a movie was Rumble in the Bronx, the one starring Jackie Chan, which was also
yeah.
filmed in Vancouver,
Also
by the way.
filmed in Vancouver,
Yeah.
damn straight.
The last time I saw a hovercraft in live action was that one episode of Top Gear where they're trying to build their own hovercraft. And one thing I learned from that is that hovercrafts are really hard to drive on
yeah,
land
man.
and on sea.
Oh, I'm sure.
Hey man, I've played Diddy Kong Racing, I know that for a fact. Anyway, so Dr. Sarkeesian gets away on a hovercraft and Mike McBride holds onto it even though he is minutes away from death. Then they have a tussle and
There's a great moment where Martin Cove flies his helicopter over the water, you know, not to help out Hulk Hogan, I think just to check out how awesome that hovercraft is.
And then Sarkeesian kind of taunts him with the antidote, and then he throws the syringe into the water where you would assume it would sink, but luckily it's a very buoyant syringe, and it continues to bob on the top of the water for at least a couple of minutes. Good thing for Mike McBride. And then Sarkeesian pulls out an even deadlier poison, which will kill him in seconds, but even though Mike McBride is clinging to life, he's able to overpower Sarkeesian and stab him in the neck, and he's hoisted by his own petard. And Mike McBride grabs a syringe that A, Sarkeesian has already used on himself, and B, has been floating in seawater for a couple of minutes, and he just jabs it into his chest. Don't bother trying to find a vein or anything like that, Mike McBride. Just jab it anywhere in your body. A needle that has been used by another person and probably has tons of microbacteria on it, but whatever. Just jam it in there and he's fine now.
It's crazy. And after stabbing the guy in the neck, it's like, and you see, didn't even look like blood even. It's like blood, but some other kind of goo that was pouring out of his mouth.
Yeah, ecto-cooler comes out of his mouth. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah. It's like some sort of like weird, pudding type thing, I mean,
that's just how that super poison of his works. Apparently.
Yeah, it replaces,
why he didn't inject Hulk Hogan with that when he had the chance back in Saudi Arabia, I don't know.
Saudi Arabia.
Excuse me, yeah.
Sarkeesian does pointedly say, this will turn your blood to fire and your bones to stone. So I guess it was fire that was coming out of his mouth. It turned his blood to lava, I guess, is what happened.
But that missed opportunity to become like a mutant lava spitting monster.
A super shredder.
Yeah,
super shredder.
Turn him into Guy Pearce from the end of Iron Man 3, yeah. So Derek pulls up on a jet ski, and he's like, how you doing, Mike? And Mike gives him a thumbs up, and then Derek's final line is, you the man! I just got a thumbs up from Mike McBride!
Thumbs up from Mike McBride, which, oh.
You the man. People, I just got a thumbs up from Mike McBride.
Badge of honor in any man.
Which I think is the last line of the movie, if I'm remembering incorrectly.
Well, they go back to the mainland to like high five Shannon Tweed and John Kreese, and then they do that cool guys don't look at explosions walk away from the mining museum as they destroy a BC heritage site. And the movie ends. That is pretty much how the movie ends.
And I'll ask him this if we ever get Mike White on the show, but I am fairly confident that at his house, Mike White has a framed photo of that shot, because he kind of stopped acting after like 2002. But like, I imagine he invites people over to his house and is all like, hey, you see this photo of Hulk Hogan, Carl Weathers, John Kreese, and the most beautiful woman in the world in like the 1980s walking away from an explosion? Yeah, that's me there, far right.
I'm on a first name basis with all these. I was in 2 movies with this collection of people.
And I always wonder if Shannon ever showed Jean that movie. If she ever showed
Jean.
I bet she tried. I bet Jean wouldn't care.
Movies, yeah. Guys, I always have to remind myself that Shannon Tweed has been married to Gene Simmons for like over 20 years.
They apparently have
they must have a very happy relationship. The only thing I know is that Gene Simmons is like notoriously one of the worst fucking people in I guess Hollywood, but like, he's from the music scene. But yeah, he's apparently terrible.
Well, supposedly he said he's never drank in his life. So I mean, that could be a big outright lie. But hey, who knows?
You know who else doesn't drink? Donald Trump. There you go. Bad people don't drink alcohol.
He says
so
he doesn't
there we go.
Drink.
All right.
So yeah, that's fucking Shadow Warriors.
That's Shadow Warriors, brother.
Do we have any other thoughts on this movie? Anything that we didn't bring up yet?
So I am so surprised that the Nostalgia Critic has not reviewed this movie series yet.
Not yet.
He's pretty busy these days beating that dead horse. So, you'll maybe get around to it.
I can summarize the Nostalgia Critic review for this. Shadow Warriors, what the fuck?
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. That's the movie review.
Yeah.
2 thoughts came to mind. One is something from this movie, and the other one is a point that Scott brought up to me that I want to get on the show. So there was a scene when early in the movie, back when they were like getting the daughter out of the Austrian chalet, Shannon Tweed goes up to her and he shows her this PDF of a video that her mother made at the Shadow Warriors headquarters, and she says, "Lily, these are my friends." And the video pans out to show all of the Shadow Warriors just going, "Hi, Lily."
Hi, Lily. There's no time to explain now, but these people are my friends. Hi, Lily.
It is a very sweet moment.
That's the most peachy thing I've ever seen. And like, it's something you would see on an episode of Captain Planet.
Yeah. Hi, Lily. I'm Hulk Hogan, and these are the Shadow Warriors.
Yeah.
I
loved it. I loved that moment.
And again, another missed opportunity for the Shadow Warriors TV show that we never got. Just like standard 45-minute adventure episodes. And then at the end of every episode is like kids in a park playing with like bottle rockets. And then like Hulk Hogan walks in and it's all like, Mike McBride is all like, that's right, kids, don't play with fireworks and everything. And then like Carl Weathers comes in a zip line. It's all like, it's important to put syringes in the closest receptacle, everybody. Shannon Tweed is like playing with dolphins.
If you ever recognize somebody's eyes that you remember through a gas mask, remember to tell your local army supply officer.
Another missed opportunity, Shadow Warriors, the Saturday morning cartoon. There was like a Rambo cartoon and a RoboCop cartoon. We could find a fucking Shadow Warriors cartoon.
This whole movie seemed like a Saturday morning cartoon. Yeah.
It wouldn't even be the first cartoon Hulk Hogan has done, because he did Rock and Wrestling.
That's right.
And he wasn't even in that.
That's right. But the crazy thing about that Rock and Wrestling, though, is that only Hulk Hogan voiced himself, but the rest of the wrestlers, they were not voiced by the actual wrestlers.
And that's funny, too, because, didn't, Roddy Piper voice a lot of cartoons in the 80s?
I'm not too sure, but he did not voice himself in Rock and Wrestling, that's for sure.
Huh.
It just didn't sound like him.
They might have made the choice to cast, actors in those roles.
Sound alike.
Yeah. You know what's hilarious? You know what friend of the podcast and past guest Hannah Snyder sent me recently? Do you, either of you, play those recent, NBA 2K games with, the story mode?
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Where they get the actual NBA players to, voice themselves.
That is rancid. Holy shit, that's the worst acting
Let's just say they're not all going to be in the next Space Jam movie.
You're right. He's right. We got too much talent, and we work too hard to be playing like this. We got to get this train right back on track, real quick,
That's right. We all have that attitude. The train will be rolling in no time. Let's do it.
Oh, man. Don't make athletes play themselves.
Ring jam.
The other thing that I wanted to mention, and this is, from Scott. So, two sort of, behind-the-scenes things that somehow dovetailed to, where Hulk Hogan was at in the making of this movie. So this came out around 2000, or was released in 1999. Around this time, two major things surrounding Hulk Hogan were happening. One, he announced that he was going to run for president in 2000.
Right.
Whoa, I don't remember that.
He never did. A celebrity running for president. Imagine.
A celebrity wrestler announcing that he wants to run for president. That's not something that would happen in 2021.
Yeah. By this time we could have had two inductees in the Wrestling Hall of Fame as president. But the other thing is, so now the first Shadow Warriors movie kind of coincides with the Starrcade event, where the movie ended with a showing of Hulk Hogan and Sting signing a contract where they would fight in another in a Nitro event. This movie, it doesn't kind of coincide, but the dates line up. So as soon as Hogan was done filming this movie, his next major event on WCW coincides with the Finger Poke of Death. Eddie, do you want to explain what the Finger Poke of Death or Doom is, or should I?
We'll take turns explaining it probably. So I'll go first and then you can finish it off after. So Finger Poke of Doom. So they were hyping up this match between Hogan versus Nash, if that's correct. So they're hyping it all out. It's okay, so here we were. NWO, they're so divided, right? So now it's Nash versus Hogan. It's wow. So it's a battle between these NWO members, right? We're gonna see shit fly, basically. So what happened was that, all this hype, all this build-up was just for Hogan only to poke his finger at Kevin Nash's chest, and Kevin Nash falls down on purpose and lets Hogan pin him, and he wins. And it was all, of course, storyline-wise, it's supposed to be, we fooled you all. You think the NWO were disbanding, but it's not. And then Goldberg comes in and just beats the crap out of everybody. That's all.
Yeah, but yes, that's exactly true what went down. But to coincide with that, the fans went ballistic. They hated that. And and sort of a prelim to that, one of the announcers on WCW spoiled the results of Monday Night Raw that same week, where Mankind, I think, won his match.
He did.
As a means to take the wind out of their sails, so people wouldn't bother watching it anyways.
Yeah.
But the fans wanted to see that. After seeing what a fucking disappointment the Finger Poke of Doom was, they all switched off and went over to Monday Night Raw to watch that match. And that drew so many declining Nielsen ratings or whatever for WCW that it never recovered.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at is the first Shadow Warriors movie kind of built up this hype for Hogan in WCW and built up the main draw and making this a big thing. And the sequel led to its demise.
Right. And okay, and you gotta go back to that whole thing in WCW as well, what happened in Nitro. So I guess that was Tony Schiavone that announced that about Foley winning the title. So Schiavone, so if it was Tony Schiavone, I mean, great commentator, no doubt about it, but, cause I watch AEW as well, but if it's Tony Schiavone, so Tony Schiavone just bluntly, announced that Mankind was going to win the title tonight, but then this is the thing, he made a big mistake, because at that time, Foley was the big baby face already by that time. He was the good guy that everyone wanted to get behind. And everyone just they're like, yeah, cause Mick Foley was hot already. They loved this dude. And of course, what they want to see is see Foley get a title push. Why not? But that's
in this effort to spoil the whole event, they just had everyone go, fuck the finger poke of doom. Let's go see Mick Foley, our boy, win it all.
Exactly, and see, it was some other superstar that no one gave a crap about. Like, if WWF booked that night, that Monday Night Raw poorly, if they gave it to some random superstar, I mean, we've seen this happen, we've seen this failure many times. Like, we've seen Jinder Mahal win the WWE title, not a few years ago, against Randy Orton, and that was a big, bad choice, right? And then we saw Brock Lesnar beat Kofi Kingston for a title for only 8 seconds, and that was the Debbie Downer as well. But because they picked the right superstar who was so hot in the fans market, Mick Foley made sense, and they gave the title to the right person to win on that Monday Night Raw, and no one will ever forget that. And that was one of the big things that really helped conquer the Monday Night War for Vince McMahon.
Great. Well, we should
probably
wrap up the episode. We are getting somewhat to the end here. The one thing that I wanted to add on before we go to our final rankings and recommendations and everything is Jameson. This movie actually has two actors in it that were both also in Future Sport, a movie that we covered on the show quite recently. Dr. Sarkeesian is played by an actor named Gerard Plunkett, and in Future Sport, he plays the voice of Edgar, who is Dean Cain's sort of robot butler Jarvis type assistant. But the other DNA that they share is the goon near the end in the hard hat that kind of...
Who bursts through the wall awesomely.
No, not him. Not him. The slightly smaller... Although that is awesome. The slightly smaller guy who kind of corners Shannon Tweed and it's like, I know everyone and I don't recognize you. I'm always here. And then she knocks him out. That's an actor named Ken Kersinger, who in Future Sport played Ramblin' Jack Jameson, I believe is the name of the character, like the kind of cyborg guy.
Yeah,
and everything.
my Australian stand-in.
Yeah. I can't quite believe I didn't bring him up on the Future Sport episode because, yeah, he's a Canadian boy, but he's a big, imposing figure. He holds the dubious distinction of both playing a canonical appearance of Jason Voorhees. He was Jason in Freddy vs. Jason, another movie that was shot in Vancouver.
Specifically in Port Moody at Bunsen Lake.
Yes. He has the dubious distinction of not only playing Jason, he also played Mason in the slasher movie parody Stan Helsing, which was also shot in Vancouver. So yes, he's played Jason and Mason, and also Hatchet Jack Jameson, and this movie where he is credited as John.
Let's get him on the show.
Let's get him on the show. Let's get all of these actors on the show. Yeah. But anyway, Shadow Warriors, brother Eddie Jameson. Do we recommend this movie?
I would say yes, if you're willing to get together with your friends one day after this pandemic is over. Get together with your friends, order pizza, have a bag of chips, and get some beers. Why not? On a Friday night?
Maybe a little vino, little winomania at home.
A little vino here, as I've been known to imbibe. I agree. I would watch this movie. I watched this movie before Assault on Devil's Island. I would say Assault on Devil's Island is cheesier and therefore funnier and better in my eyes. This is, it's also good. It's a good companion piece to this movie. It makes me wish there was a third movie in this series.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, definitely. We needed more Shadow Warriors. Yeah, the first one is better. It's crazier. More things explode. I feel like I haven't, like you've seen it the most recently, Eddie. Are we correct in assuming that something explodes every 5 minutes in that movie? Because that's what my memory is reminding me of.
If you're not seeing explosions, you're hearing gunfire and you're seeing people martial arting each other.
Fly
basically.
through the air.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, this movie's fine. It just doesn't quite compare to the first one, an entire gymnastics team doesn't get kidnapped. There's no Billy Blanks. No sharks explode, rather pointedly. But, watch both of these back to back, because it's a fun double feature.
I mean, I did think that, like, this took itself to a degree a little bit more seriously.
Yes.
Maybe because they just didn't have the budget to blow up a shark or to hire an entire gymnastics team. But, it's just as cheesy to an extent. And like I said, I'm still waiting for that, assault on the deserted...
assault on Beelzebub's bathtub.
Make,
some nonsense like that, yeah.
Was it Assault on the Mansion from Hell?
Yeah, there we go. Assault on Mansion from Hell, where we get to, like, learn a little bit more about Derek.
Exactly.
I will say this, a lot of the mystique was lost on the Derek character in this movie.
They had to flesh Derek out a little bit.
I guess.
I spent a lot of this runtime genuinely worried that Derek was going to get killed off. Because, like, the first Shadow Warriors, like, sort of like the crux of the mission is they kill off the lesser-known members of the Shadow Warriors. Mm-hmm. Derek survives both of these movies just on sheer charisma alone, so, I know. I love Derek. But yeah, they did have to flesh him out a little bit. But we should wrap up. Eddie Lamb, thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Thanks for having me on there, guys.
It was so great.
Thanks for being here, buddy.
This is just so much fun.
And to echo what Jameson said earlier, once this pandemic is over, I cannot wait to get back to live band karaoke or piano karaoke. That is just so incredibly fun, and I will be there with bells on. Please take the opportunity right now to plug all your things, direct people to where they can find your music, and anything else that you want to promote right now.
Awesome. Okay, guys, so check out my website. It's www.eddielambmusic.ca. That's EDDIELAM music.ca. So my social media platforms, I got TikTok, of course, almost at 30,000 followers now, which is amazing.
Hey, Jesus, man, good for you.
So, and I also got Instagram, I got Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, and of course Facebook. So follow me on all those platforms. If you enjoy my content, I do accept donations. It's paypal.me/EddieLambMusic as well. And of course, if you want me to do tutorials on certain songs that you want me to put on my TikTok channel, by all means, message me on Instagram or you can email me. Just go to my website. My email address will be on there, and let me know, and I'll try to make a tutorial of it if I can do it in under 1 minute. That's the premise of my TikTok channel right there. If you want me to play piano of whatever song, I can do that as well. If you want me to do a musical telegram to wish someone a happy special occasion, I can do that as well. So
I didn't even know you did that. Maybe I'll take advantage of that.
That's on my TikTok, man. Check out my TikTok. I got a few on there already. So, yeah, and that's pretty much it, guys. And, of course, like on my YouTube channel, I do various covers of songs. I can upload some of my best tutorials on there as well. And I also sometimes do a podcast called Music Talk Mondays. So, if you want me to talk about anything related to the music industry or your instruments and all that, I am here to talk about it.
Great. And of course, read the link in the episode description. We'll include the links to everything that Eddie just mentioned there, and you can check everything out there. Jameson, you got any quick recommendations for this week? Anything you loved or you checked out?
Last night I watched the movie Love and Monsters, which is this Netflix original movie about a sort of a dorky guy who tries to survive the apocalypse, and he fights all these like mutated creatures. It's a fun watch, and it reminded me of like a lot of movies that I liked as a kid, but I think it has like more of a modern sensibility for as a message, because he braves the post-apocalyptic wilderness to go and track down his girlfriend that he knew 7 years ago. And once he finds her, things are a lot different. And, he realizes that the thing that he really wanted, he kind of left behind in his home before. It's a great message. It's like the kind of movie that I wish I watched, like, when I was a kid. So, Love and Monsters, I'd check it out. It's a little cutesy for my taste, but at the same time, like, I enjoy the production values of it, and I enjoy the message. So, Love and Monsters, check it out.
That movie inexplicably got nominated for Best Visual Effects at the Oscars this year, largely because there just, weren't as many movies released this year. Mm-hmm. How did you find the visual effects in Love and Monsters? It's not a movie I have ever heard of until like recently and whatnot, so it was kind of surprising that it got an Oscar nomination.
I mean, it doesn't not deserve. Maybe that's a double negative. Like, I've seen, better special effects, I suppose, but like,
right.
I didn't notice anything bad about the movies. I enjoyed the creature design, good set design, good production design. So I don't, what do you want me to say? I like the movie.
Fair enough. I'm just asking out of curiosity. Cool. I'm gonna throw a quick recommendation to a TV show that I just started watching that I think is really good, and I'm excited to watch the remaining seasons. It's called Search Party. It stars Arrested Development's Aaliyah Shawkat as kind of this aimless 30-something that doesn't really have any direction in her life, and she has these 3 kind of shitty friends who are kind of self-involved, and then like a casual acquaintance of theirs from college goes missing, and sort of the crux of the show is they're trying to find out what happened to this woman. And it's very funny, very smart writing. Leah Shawkat is hilarious, so I'm glad that she finally got like a really good showcase for her. So I recommend that. And that was Shadow Warriors, brother, directed by John Cassar. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to hear more and know when new episodes drop, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram at the F is This Podcast, and the F_is_this on Twitter. If you're listening to this on Spotify and wish there was a visual reference option, you can also watch these episodes on our YouTube page. And if you're watching these episodes on YouTube, but think the visual medium is for simps, then listen to us on Spotify. And if you're one of the 3 people that still use TuneIn Radio, we're also still on that app as well. And now, with our episode-specific catchphrase, Jameson Rafter!
Hi, Lily!
Hi, Lily! Hi, Lily! We're the Shadow Warriors!
I've been looking for this place for 45 minutes.